Welcome back to our summary study of the Brhad Bhagavatamrta. Now we're at the point where Gopa-kumara is about to begin telling this Mathura Brahman his story and how he got the Gopal mantra. They're at the Vrindavan forest where they've had this chance meeting. Shiva told him, the Mathura Brahman, go to Vrindavan, your desires will be fulfilled. Radharani has asked Gopa-kumara to go there. And so now they're together. So Gopa-kumara begins with his story. He says that I met my guru in Govardhan. He says, I was a cowherd boy, and I had many cows that I herded, me and my friends. And so we saw this Brahmin occasionally come into the forest, and he would be wandering from one place to place. And he looked very renounced, and he had his body what appeared to be very divine. But he was always chanting the glories of Krishna. He would heartily embrace us and affectionately cover us with kisses. He was pleased with my services. Gopa-kumara would often give him milk and different milk sweets, and he was happy with that. And one day, meeting Gopa-kumara on the shore of the Yamuna, he embraced him and he spoke these words. He says, my dear child, if you want to fulfill all your desires, please bathe at Keshigat and then accept from me the mercy of the Lord of the universe. So Gopa-kumara went and he bathed and he came, and his spiritual master gave him the mantra. But before his guru could explain the details of the mantra, when he started explaining it, he went into ecstasy. And so Gopa-kumara was kind of a little bit afraid about being too inquisitive at this time. But his spiritual master left. But Gopa-kumara seriously took up the chanting of this mantra. He did not have any instructions, but he faithfully chanted this mantra daily. But then he also remembered what his guru said. He says, accept from me this mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So based on that little bit of information, that this is the mercy of the Lord, that if he chants it faithfully, that the result will come. So at one point, Gopa-kumara, he leaves and he goes travels, and he meets this Brahmin who's worshiping a Shalagram Shila. He asks him about the method of worship he's doing and who it is that he's worshiping. And the Brahmin gives him some explanation. And then the Brahmin eventually wraps up his puja. He starts putting the Shalagram Shila in a box, and Gopa-kumara starts to, what are you doing? Why are you putting the Lord of the universe in a box? And the Brahmin says, oh, new Vaishnav, I'm just a poor Brahmin. If you want to see opulent worship of the Lord, there's a kingdom very close. You should go there, and you can see great opulence and how the Lord is worshipped there very nicely. But now I must go home. You should come with me, and I will make an offering, and then I will share it with you. But Gopa-kumara decided not to stay. He continued on his journey. He's a Kanista devotee at this time. He doesn't see the value of Vaishnavas on the same level as worshiping the deities. So he goes to this kingdom, and he sees this great opulence of Vishnu. He sees how gorgeous the deity of Vishnu is dressed and how exquisite he is. And he sees how the king in that kingdom, how greatly he manages the worship of the Lord there, and how all the Vaishnavas in that kingdom are encouraged to worship the Lord. And so at one time, this king dies, and they had no one to take the position of the king. He had no son. So they searched around and they looked for signs, and they found that the signs in Gopa-kumara that he would be a good candidate to be the king. So Gopa-kumara, for a period of time, he takes up this position as the king, and so he enhances the worship of the temple of the Lord. And he tries to, in many ways, encourage all the Vaishnavas to glorify the Lord. But there were some issues with this, because at the same time there was managerial things he had to deal with. Even though he continued to chant his mantra, he had to deal with other kingdoms, other emperors. And so all this management kind of hindered his own sadhana. So he gave up the kingdom. At the same time, he heard there were some travelers coming through, and he heard about a place in Rissa where they worship the Lord Jagannath there. The one thing different about that place, he heard that in this kingdom, if the Mahaprasada was touched by an unclean or outcast person, it would be considered unclean. But in Jagannath Puri, Prasada can never be contaminated. It doesn't matter who touches it, it's always considered Mahaprasad, the mercy of the Lord. So he goes to Jagannath Puri, and he sees how greatly the worship there is. He enters the temple, and as soon as he sees the deity of Lord Jagannath, he faints, and he composes himself. At one point, he gets up, and he chases and tries to embrace Lord Jagannath, but the guards there, they beat him with a stick, and he goes outside and then takes some Mahaprasadam. So he chants his japa every day, and he does it very seriously. And similarly, the same thing happens here. He notices how the king of Orissa, how nicely he worships Lord Jagannath. And during festivals like Ratha Yatra, he sweeps the path in front of the parade cart. So he's at the same time thinking this, that king also passes away. And they look for someone to take the position, and they find Gopa-kumara. And Gopa-kumara has the signs of being a king, so they put him in that position. We can see the Lord himself is making all these arrangements here. Here again, he's worshiping Lord Jagannath very opulently, and he's trying to encourage greater worship of the Lord and trying to increase the festivals. But at the same time, the management also is a hindrance. But he continues to worship very opulently the Supreme Lord. And in times, he became indifferent to chanting his japa. And he even gave up listening to the Puranas and histories of the Lord. Because he thought just focusing on worshiping the deity is all that he needs to do. Eventually, he gives up the kingdom and just wants to serve the Lord and chant his japa privately, because he found that also an impediment. One day he saw his guru in the temple. He was in the temple, but it was very crowded. One moment he saw him, and the next moment his guru was gone. But in a day or two, he saw him by the shore, and his guru approached him, and his guru gave him some instructions, and he gave him 4 boons. The guru told him, "May you always remain a young cowherd boy. May you live a very long life. Whatever you desire, while chanting your mantra, you will achieve it." That was his sankalpa. Sankalpa is one's intention. When you perform some sacrifice or some puja, or you even chanting your japa, there has to be, you should formulate in your mind, why am I doing this? You should think, what's the purpose of this? And what is the goal of this? That's your intention. Typically what happens is once some kalpa doesn't come until a distant future, maybe in another life. But he got the boon from his spiritual master that he would get his sankalpa immediately. Whatever he desired by chanting his mantra, he would receive it. And then he gave him the 4th boon, which is very important. He said, "May you have the right mentality for tasting the mantra's fruit." This is very important because then he doesn't get puffed up and misuse the power of this mantra. And then he gave him an instruction. He told Gopa-kumara, never become indifferent to chanting your japa. At that point, his spiritual master went on. Gopa-kumara was thinking, missing Vrindavan. He would like to go back to Vrindavan at this point. But at the same time, he's attached to the service of Jagannath. He doesn't want to leave Lord Jagannath. So his mind is going back and forth. Should I stay? Should I leave? Should I stay? Should I leave? So the Lord came to him in a dream and said, don't disturb your mind this way. I relish Vrindavan. My pastimes are in Vrindavan. If you want to go to Vrindavan, that's okay. The next day, that morning, the Pujari came and gave Gopa-kumara a garland from the Lord. And he took that as a sign, and he went to Vrindavan. He spent some time in Vrindavan. This winds up ending the chapter 1, and in the next video we'll go to chapter 2. He spends a little bit of time in Vrindavan, but he's not recognized by any of his friends. And he goes and eventually leaves. Like, well, I'll just go back to Jagannath Puri. And so he starts to leave, and he runs into some Brahmins who are expert at religious duties. And they tell him first about Indra and the heavenly planets, and about these upper planetary systems. So we'll pick up next where Gopa-kumara meets these Brahmins. He hears about the upper planetary systems, and he has a desire to travel. And that will be chapter 2, which will take us all the way up, his travels all the way up to Brahmaloka. So thank you very much. Please come back. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.